Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley if you're new here, and in this video I am finally going to sit down and compare The Good and the Beautiful Language Arts for Kindergarten with All About Reading. So just a quick little bit about me is that we just finished our second year of homeschooling. I have a kindergartner, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. I ended up with both of these curriculum because I started with The Good and the Beautiful, and The Good and the Beautiful was working for us, but I was really intrigued by All About Reading, and so I decided to buy All About Reading used online from Facebook Marketplace to see the difference between All About Reading and The Good and the Beautiful. And spoiler alert, we stuck with The Good and the Beautiful, so this might be a little bit of a different spin than I feel like I saw most on YouTube. Most people were talking about why they liked All About Reading over something like The Good and the Beautiful or other curriculum. So I definitely don't dislike All About Reading, but I'm gonna just give you a little bit about my thoughts, real quick thoughts on each of the curriculum, and then I'm gonna do a comparison of 2 or 3 different lessons of them teaching the exact same concept, so you can get a really good idea of the differences between the two curriculum in case you are trying to decide between the two, which I'd imagine you probably are if you're watching this video. So in case this is one of the first few videos, I'm just going to quickly go through what you get with each curriculum. The Good and the Beautiful Language Arts Kindergarten comes with the course book. This one I printed out myself. You can print them out for free. Same thing with these, that's why they don't look super professional, but the booster books, these are the booster cards. And then I have the booster books in here. I just printed them out and cut them. And so we actually did finish all of this, and it worked totally fine printing it ourselves. It just doesn't look quite as pretty. Although the course book does. I feel like it works well with the course book, especially if you buy yourself a binding machine and everything. But so obviously very cost effective if it works for you and your family. So that's what you get. If you purchase The Good and the Beautiful Language Arts Kindergarten, that's all the stuff that you would need to complete the course. And then we have All About Reading. So it comes with the teacher's manual, which is a pretty big book. It comes with their readers, which is 3 different books. I actually might use these over the summer to have my son practice his reading because I've heard such good things about these. I did have my son do a little bit of this curriculum, and he really did enjoy the few stories that we did do of them. And then it comes with the activity book. So this is it taken apart, cut out. So if you don't know, each lesson has hands-on activities that you could reuse with future kids. So if you take them out and put them in a big binder like this in page protectors, then you could just use it over and over. You could sell it again. Yeah, so it comes with that. It comes with, oh, I almost forgot, it comes with letter tiles, which I have up in our other room. So these little magnetic tiles that you could put on a whiteboard or something. You also don't have to buy those. You could choose to use an app instead if that's what you would rather do. And then it comes with flashcards. So All About Reading has a big box that you could buy. I didn't want to buy the box, so I just bought this little box where it didn't actually hold all of them. I have a few in another area in the house, but it worked totally fine doing it like this as well. So those are all the things that you would need for All About Reading if you wanted to use that curriculum. So there's definitely quite a bit more with All About Reading. It's also much more expensive. I think I'll put below what they actually cost, but off the top of my head, I believe The Good and the Beautiful costs something like $70 maybe, and All About Reading, I got it for $150 used, but I think it's more like $225 or something. So it is quite a bit more expensive, and it definitely is more extensive as well, which you will see soon. So for the next part, I just want to share my quick thoughts on The Good and the Beautiful versus All About Reading. Like I said, we finished The Good and the Beautiful. I cut out every single lesson of All About Reading, so I did get a really good idea of what the lessons were like. I did up to lesson 10 with my son, so I didn't do the whole thing, but I got a good idea of what it was like. And my quick thoughts on it are that we really enjoyed The Good and the Beautiful. I think that All About Reading is definitely more extensive, so if you think your child needs a lot of repetition, or you have started doing some reading work with them and you see that they're not picking it up very quickly, I think All About Reading is a super good program for that because you are constantly repeating a lot. The Good and the Beautiful, though, I feel like is a really good curriculum for kids who maybe reading does come more naturally. I wouldn't necessarily say my son reading comes super naturally to him. He definitely has to work at it. It's not his favorite. He'll tell you he doesn't like it sometimes. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily only for kids that it comes naturally for, but it has taught him so much. Like I said, he didn't love it. He didn't hate it. Just not his favorite, but it taught him a lot. So I feel like The Good and the Beautiful could be a good fit for a lot of kids, but if you think that your kid really needs a lot more repetition, then I think All About Reading is a better fit. Something else that I really liked about The Good and the Beautiful is that the lessons are not repetitive at all. They're new every time. I really enjoyed how it has literature, geography, and art in it as well, where All About Reading is as you probably know, just a phonics program for the most part. So I feel like having the other components in the course book for The Good and the Beautiful really gave it a lot more interest, where you would have some reading practice on some lessons, but then there would also be like a geography lesson or an art lesson. And it wasn't so often that it felt like you're not learning enough phonics. There was a ton of phonics in it. It's mostly a phonics program at this age especially, but I definitely will say that it kept it really interesting, where when I was cutting out all of the activities for All About Reading, it definitely would also be very interesting. I definitely don't want to come across like I'm talking bad about All About Reading, because I think it's a really good program. I just don't think it was necessary for us. But anyway, I cut out all of the manipulatives that you would use with it, and there's also a large variety of it. So they both definitely have a way of switching things up, but All About Reading, you'll see, has some of the components that you are doing the same thing, like the flashcards and the letter tiles. So I'll show you when we get inside the books. So I will also say that I think All About Reading, would say there's definitely more stories to be read, so that it's more comprehensive in that way. But it's interesting because you don't read a story every day, where with The Good and the Beautiful, you do read stories, maybe not every day, but probably a little bit more often, but there's less stories to be read. So you read the stories over again, where the other one is there's more variety in the stories. So one last thing that I will mention before we go into the books is that I actually really did enjoy the booster cards. It almost felt like a separate subject almost completely than the workbook. It really made it easy for me to separate the two, where it was like, we'll do 10 minutes of reading right after breakfast and then we'll do your workbook later on in the day. And for my son, that was really helpful because, like I said, it wasn't his favorite subject, so being able to separate it on a lot of days was really helpful for us. Okay, so now I'm going to bring you into the other room and I'm going to open up each of the curriculum, and I want to sit down and I'm going to show you, like I said, how each curriculum teaches something specific so that you can see a really good comparison of the two curriculum. Okay, so I thought I would start with The Good and the Beautiful, how they would teach the ch sound, and then I will show you how All About Reading teaches that sound. So the first place that a student will be introduced to a concept for reading, like a letter sound or something like that, is in the booster cards. As they go through these cards, the way that it works with the course is that they start at the beginning and they start with card 1, and every day they recommend that they do 6 to 10 minutes of reading in here. And then once they can do it, they can read the page without any mistakes. They're allowed to put a little sticker here. And then the next time they start, they'd start on the next page. So the first place that they will be introduced to the ch sound is on card 39, where they will read all of these sounds. You would tell them obviously what CH says. It teaches you how to teach that. And then they would read these words, and then my son, it took maybe 2 to 3 days to really master a full page, sometimes longer if it was more difficult, sometimes slightly faster, but largely about 2 to 3-ish days, where he'll just keep reading the same words. And then they usually always had these little pyramids, which were really cool. And this was also learning the ch sound, so lots of CH. And then when they get to the bottom of this, they get to read one of their books, which looks like this. So My Little Chick, and then there's lots of sounds in there with the ch sound. So that is the first place that they are introduced to the sound. They usually end up reading, like I said, the same pages maybe 2 or 3 times, and then that's until they're mastered. And then later on in the course, depending on how fast your child goes through the booster cards, it could be right away or it could be maybe a few weeks later, they're introduced to the concept again in their course book. So for this sound specifically, they go through this page where they're reading the words again. That is all for that lesson. This is review. And then not the next lesson, but the lesson after, they do part 2, and then this is a letter tiles app that they also use. So they have to spell out these words, and then they read sentences with the ch sound. So that is technically all that they are shown. But then, like I said, each lesson has review, so they're independent practice. They will definitely see the sound again at some point. It's not like an official lesson or anything, but they will eventually see it. Like here, there's a few words with the CH, so they definitely consistently will see it again as they go on in the course. Okay, and here is how the All About Reading lesson would teach the same concept, the ch sound. So it always starts off with reviewing past phonogram cards and word cards that your child is working on mastering. It's similar to the booster cards where once they've mastered it, you move on to the next concept and you keep working on things that they have not mastered yet. And then it starts with introducing the phonogram card, the new phonogram card. You teach them the sound, and then you use the letter tiles. So this can be done with the letter tiles app or with the physical tiles, and it just shows you moving the letters around, showing them how to practice using their new sound. Then they are going to complete an activity out of their activity book. So let me grab that. So the first one, it looks like it comes with this little mouse, and they just practice reading a lot of words that have the CH sound. And then they have a second activity where it looks like they are practicing other sounds that they learned as well, where there's these little envelopes. I'd imagine you probably just put them on top, where they all have different phonograms that they have to read and then sort. So that's a pretty fun activity as well. Then they get their word cards that they practice reading. And then there is a fluency sheet where they just practice reading what's on here. And then there is a back as well. And it looks like that is the end. They always recommend reading to your child for 20 minutes. Not anything specific that they've given, just anything that you want. So that looks like that is how All About Reading would introduce that letter sound. Okay, so I'm going to do one more comparison of each curriculum, doing the double consonant S, F, and L. So for the Good and the Beautiful, like I said, they are always introduced first in the booster cards. So they would do this until they could master it. Then they have their pyramids, and then there is a book called At the Well, and it looks like that is all in this. So then it is also introduced in the course book. I forgot to mention there are also these little bullet points where they actually have to master it first in the book before they do it in their course book. So if you make it to this lesson before they've done it in their course book, or in their booster book, I mean, then you pause this and you only work on the booster cards until they've mastered these sounds, and then you do it in the book. That actually never happened, and I've heard they mention online that typically kids will learn faster in the booster books than they will in the course book, and that was true for us, so we never had to stop. But that's what this is here for. So they introduce how to read these sounds again, and then it's review. So it's really just a little bit here, but it's a lot of practice. And then the next day was part 2. So same thing, we did a sticky note game where I wrote the words here on sticky notes and you hang them on the wall, and then they had to find the ones that rhymed. So that was fun. That was a review of those letter sounds. And then that is all officially, but then like I said, they definitely will see more as they do their review. When they do their independent work, there is a lot of review in that. Okay, and now here is how All About Reading will teach that same concept. Their lessons always start with like a preparation for you, so you know what you're getting into, what you will need, that sort of thing. And then it's, like I said, they review their cards, their flashcards, then they work on their letter tiles. Then they do their activity from the activity book, which I will grab to show you what it is for this lesson. So the first thing that it has them work on is these little flippers where they just practice doing the words here. So The Good and the Beautiful also had a few of these, but not as many as All About Reading. So they do one for each of the letters, and then they do this activity where I'm not quite sure what they're doing, but there is a whole bunch of words on the back, and I guess they would order them here. How I guess probably just in order, maybe just make it a fun little game. Then they do their word cards, and occasionally there are some sight words, which they call leap words here, because they actually teach why the words are said, where The Good and the Beautiful does do sight words, but they don't teach the reason why. And then they have their fluency practice, the sheets here. They practice these, and then it's their read aloud. So that is how All About Reading does that same concept. I will say that they're both pretty extensive. All About Reading, like I mentioned before, is just, it's a lot more methodical. You're doing like the same exact thing for each concept, where The Good and the Beautiful is the same in that regard, but it's not as much that you're reviewing. You're just reviewing the booster cards and then the booster book, but you don't do it as much, where this one you have the letter tiles, and then the word cards, and then the activity, and then this. So it's a lot of repetition. So that is it for this video. I hope that it was helpful. If you have any questions at all for me about either of these curriculum, please leave them in the comments below, and I will definitely get back to you. I'd also love to hear from you. Which one of these curriculum would you pick, or are you leaning towards, or have you used either of them? Which one do you favor and why? I find it super interesting to talk about this with other people and hear other people's opinions. So definitely leave a comment below if you would like to chat. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new and you want to follow along with our homeschool journey. I have a good amount of videos from our preschool and our kindergarten year, and I'd love to have you. And thank you for watching again, and I will see you in the next one.